Advising and Mentoring Program. So we acknowledge that the land each of us live, learn, and thrive on are the traditional, ancestral, and unceded homelands of indigenous and tribal nations. Cal Poly Pomona is on the original homelands of the Gabrielino Tongva tribal nations. We acknowledge the genocide and systems of oppression that have dispossessed indigenous people of their lands, and we honor and respect the diverse and beautiful peoples still connected to this land.
All right, Sam, go ahead and take it over.
All right. So hello, everybody. Let's see. Okay, my audio's on. Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Ullman. I am a tutor and peer mentor with RAMP, and I'm excited to be moderating today's first generation graduate student panel. Just so everybody knows, we will be having a Q&A at the end of our panel and at the end of the event. So feel free to write down your questions and put those questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand or unmute yourself when the time comes. All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So we have our first question, and this question will be specifically for Areli and Jackie. So consider your earliest notions of graduate school. What are some of the reasons you decided to apply, and were there any individuals who helped you make your decision? So Areli can go ahead and take this one first.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Areli. I'm studying at the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine program. Currently, I'm there as a first year, and so I'll graduate class of 2028. So considering my earliest notions of grad school, I never knew that going into vet school, I had to go into grad school. So I knew I always wanted to do something with animals, but I didn't know that that required grad school. Funny story, right after high school, I actually tried to apply to vet school, not knowing that grad school or that undergrad was a thing and that grad school was even a program or studies that I could further into. So in high school, I did try to apply to the Western Health University, which is the vet school. But I did later learn that I could not apply and that I had to go through undergrad and then grad school. So those people who kind of helped me like my decision was another trio program on my high school. It's called Avid, and they kind of helped guide me, and they were just letting me know what those paths were. And so those programs definitely like implemented a path where I then met Ramp. And then with Ramp, I actually had Jane as my tutor, and she helped me with my grad school and preparing for my applications and furthering my education and going into vet school as where I am at now.
Well, it sounds like you were much better prepared than I was. So if there's anything I can share about my experience, I mean, the fact that y'all are here for this workshop, I mean, light years ahead of how prepared I was when I was thinking about graduate school. So I completed undergrad like many moons ago. You probably were all babies. I finished my undergrad around 2011 or so, and to be quite honest, I went to graduate school out of necessity. I was going to school during a time where we were in the middle of a recession. There were no jobs, and I was kind of tracked to do like education related work. And this was in the age where teachers were being pink slipped and losing their jobs. And so there certainly wasn't going to be a job for a newbie who just got their bachelor's degree, right? And so for a lot of us during that time, graduate school was sort of like a safe space, right? For us to continue our education and kind of figure out what to do, right, in the next couple of years, buy us some time, so to speak. Honestly, I did not even understand what graduate school was, or what a master's degree was. My boyfriend at the time in college was the one that said one day, "Hey, so I'm going to apply for grad school." And I was like, "Oh, cool, what's that?" They're like, "Well, it's what you get after your bachelor's degree." And I was like, "Oh, like I should do that. Like, why am I, well, like, no one's telling me I should do that, you know?" He's like, "Who told you about grad school?" He's like, "Oh, my advisor." And I was like, "I've never even met my advisor in college." And, I was like, wow, okay. So it was honestly peer guidance, right? That really kind of drove me to ultimately make a decision to apply to graduate school. which means I was definitely not as prepared, right? When I was coming to writing my personal statements and asking for those letters of recommendation, I was not positioned well to have built those relationships with my faculty to even have them be able to write one that was a strong letter of recommendation, right? And so it was very awkward for me. It felt very, impersonal, right? And so if there's anything I can share about my experiences, take that time now, right? Even if you're a year away from now, it's not too late, right? Find someone that you really connect with, whether it's someone that's in your classes in your field or not at all, right? Maybe you're part of a mentorship program like I am First, for example, and you've had a chance to have a faculty or staff mentor there. Use them and lean on them, right, to write those letters of rec for you. So, yes, a very, I should say, not a good story to follow, but definitely some hard lessons that I hope that to share with you so you can do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, thank you guys both for sharing. What I'm noticing is definitely that it's important to look to your resources, your peers, your advisors, those who are in those positions to be able to help you navigate those really tough challenges. Because I think a lot of times grad school is a necessity for some students, and we need those people who are able to guide us and help us in those directions. So, Adeli, you turn to Trio for those, and Jackie, you turn to those around you, your peers, and your partner at the time. So I think it's really important that we use those individuals to help us navigate that. And also, my apologies, I completely skipped over introductions. So before we move on to the next question, I'm going to have each of you introduce yourself, your graduate program in your university, and your year in the program. So we can go ahead and start with Areli, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Arely Navarro. I'm attending the School of Veterinary Medicine at UC Davis, and I'm a first year here and will be graduating class of 2028.
Thank you. All right, Jackie, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Naranjo. I'm currently a staff member here, Senior Coordinator of Academic Support and Engagement. I'm also a doctoral student at Cal State Long Beach in the Educational Leadership Program.
Thank
Oh,
you.
and I'm in my last year. I'm wrapping up.
Amazing. All right, Jasmine, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. My name is Jasmine Peñate. I'm a first year doctoral student here at the University of Oregon. I'm doing my PhD in sociology, so I'll be graduating, I think, 2028 or 2029. I still got a long ways to go.
Amazing. Thank you for introducing yourself. And Jane.
Hi everyone, my name is Jane Rumpach. I'm pursuing my master's in biological sciences here at Cal Poly Pomona, and I'm currently finishing up my first year, and I'm projected to graduate 2026. So I just have one more year.
Amazing. And last but not least, Karen, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Karen Segura. I am currently doing my master's in aerospace engineering at CU Boulder, and I am in my second year, set to graduate next year, 2026.
Amazing. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. We are looking forward to hearing from all of you. So now moving on to the second question, which will be for Jane and Jasmine. So the question is, how did you approach the graduate school application process, and how early in advance did you begin preparing? What are some suggestions or strategies that you use that you would like to share with the students? So we'll start with Jane.
Okay, so to preface, I met my current advisor during my last year of my undergraduate career, and I actually started conducting research right away with her before I even knew I was going to pursue a master's degree in that specific field. And so as I continued to conduct research with her, she mentioned that to continue with her project, I should consider getting a master's in biology at CPP. And so it was something that I hadn't considered. I always thought I'm going to get a master's in animal science. It felt like the natural step. But then when she mentioned that, I started really thinking about it and started going, why not? You know, like this is something I'm going to switch colleges and this is going to be something new. And she had actually agreed to already accept me into her lab. And so that allows me to join her research team. So I knew I had an in. And she kept telling me, you'll get in, no worries, as long as you do the requirements, you'll be in. So with that said, I had a lot of help with the graduate school application process in terms of like letters of rec and like kind of just getting my personal statement in and everything. She helped me. She had a huge hand in that. And I only applied to Cal Poly Pomona because that was the only school I really wanted to go to, and because of the resources and because of the cattle that we have here, because I work with cattle. And so I began the application process as early as a year before my anticipated start date. Some tips I have specifically for developing connections and research involvement, I would say reach out to a lot of the faculty members, the professors that are within your department. Ask if they're leading any projects, are they involved in any research projects, especially if you want to go into a research-based program, because this gives you a chance to see if it aligns with what you're interested in. Also, asking questions, participating in class, attending office hours, and overall doing well in their classes, it makes a great impression, and it can also be good steps towards, developing connections. For program selection and like organizing a timeline, I would recommend using an Excel sheet. And students I've had in grad school prep, I always have them make an Excel sheet, especially if you're comparing multiple options. So that helps you clearly see like the factors that are important to you and kind of help you directly compare it, especially when you're choosing a program.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jane. And Jasmine, if you'd like to answer.
Yeah. So I would say about the same. I started thinking about grad school maybe like a year prior. I actually didn't really want to, I didn't really think about it until I spoke with a professor and I just mentioned, oh, I'm interested in this topic. And he was like, you should probably talk to this professor. And so then me and another professor in the department, we were talking about research, and he got me into the McNair Scholars Program. And so the McNair Scholars Program had like a summer program where they were already having us prepare and looking into different grad schools. And so like Jane, I did have an Excel sheet to be a little organized because it was a lot of schools. I was meeting with different professors in those different schools to see if I vibe with them, and also I also got in contact with some of the grad students to really get like like how the program really is. I would say as well, as far as research, I did start to do research. As soon as I was speaking with this professor in the sociology department, I was working with him like maybe once or twice a week about with my research, and um yeah, so I'm still working on that specific research now, but that's what my process was like, or as far as like the application process. And as well as I was also involved in um, there's like mentorship programs for for sociology, and so I was paired with another doctoral student from Indiana, University of Indiana, and he was kind of showing me how to apply, where to look for fellowships, and all that stuff.
Nice. Thank you guys both for sharing. I think something you both mentioned that was really important is getting connected with your professors. Your professors are a really big resource in order to make connections in the field, in the industry, and also to give you some guidance on where you may want to go in terms of your research. They are professionals in the industry as well, so they can provide really good guidance. And I really like how you both had an Excel sheet. I think that's a really great way to compartmentalize all of the different programs you're applying to and really start to get an idea of all of the different components of the application and decision process. So thank you guys both for sharing. My next question is for Jasmine and Karen. So this question is, did you apply to grad schools outside of California? And what are some of the challenges and benefits that came from that? So Jasmine, if you would like to take this one.
Yeah. So I originally wanted to stay in California. Um, and I did apply to other schools outside of California. I'm looking at my Excel sheet right now. I applied to 10 schools in total, but I've only applied to 4 universities in California. Got rejected from all of the ones in California. And I think the biggest challenge was that it was a little bit more competitive, because I know a lot of the UCs are really like heavily research based, and the CSUs don't really have doctoral programs that I want, like the sociology program. They have master's programs, but not really PhD. And so that was one of the challenges. And I applied to different schools like the University of Oregon, University of Pittsburgh, and um, that they were. I've noticed that I got accepted to the ones that were out of state, and I felt like I think that was some maybe being out of state was a benefit. Maybe they were like, oh, maybe this person's from a different state. Well, like I like uh, we'll let them in. But as far as benefits, I'm not sure. But I think definitely the challenges with any grad schools outside in California is that if you're looking for a doctoral program that's like sociology or for example, it's really hard to find one, especially for CSU or UC. They're really competitive, but I would definitely recommend applying outside of California as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jasmine. All right, Karen, if you want to go ahead and answer.
Yeah, so I only ended up applying to two schools, one being USC and the other one being CU Boulder. So my situation's a little different because I actually work full time. I'm a full-time engineer at Lockheed. So I guess when I came to looking at grad schools, it really was a different perspective because I had to consider several things like one, it, when I went to grad school, like online option is pretty big for working professionals, and especially in engineering. So I knew that that automatically opened up schools outside of California. Um, so for me, when I decided to apply to schools, I really wanted to make sure that I was applying to schools that were specific to what I wanted to study. And CU Boulder ended up being one of them, which was out of California. In terms of some challenges, well, online itself is very different. You feel very disconnected to the campus. Although I have given myself the privilege to go multiple times. I do love it out there. And I knew that when I came to choosing a school, I also wanted to leave it open where if I did have the opportunity to take something like a leave of absence from work, that I would be able to enjoy going to campus and being there. Um, so yeah, the main challenge is like being disconnected. Other two, like my program is a little different because they'll tend to mesh like in person with online students. So having to navigate that sort of relationship of like different time zones and, having to understand like what their workload is versus my workload. But overall, I think the main benefit is one, Colorado, like the school that I chose it for a reason, right? The different opportunities that they have, and that I knew that I would be able to benefit directly from like the knowledge that was there. So the professors, the people, the type of research that they were doing, and also being online, like I could connect with a lot of people. So I started meeting people who were also working professionals and they're working at, the same company as me or, different companies. And being able to like to connect with them and like struggle together in a class or be able to ask like, hey, what do you do? Like that sounds really cool. Can you tell me more about it? Um, so yeah, I think going to a school outside of California can have its benefits, especially if you are open to maybe doing online or if you want to do something hybrid where you work and go to school.
Yeah, thank you guys both for sharing. I think those are two really important different perspectives to see that from. Jasmine, you really bring out the importance of looking at like what the statistics are and what the competitiveness is within California versus outside. So really doing that research into what programs are not easier to get into, but a lot easier to find in terms of where you can go. And I think Karen, you really bring a good perspective on what it is to do an online program and the benefits of how that can actually help you connect with others in a grad program rather than inhibit it. Because I feel like sometimes the perception is that online programs can inhibit that connection, but I think you bring a really, really interesting perspective on how attending grad program out of state can really connect you more with people, especially working full time. So thank you both for those answers. Let's see. This next question is going to be once again for Karen and Jasmine. And this question is, what factors do you think are important to consider when selecting your graduate program? And what was your decision-making process? What was your decision-making process if you were accepted into multiple different graduate programs? And were there any particular factors that influenced your decision? So this could be finance, this could be career aspirations or graduate program demographics, things of that sort. So Karen, you can go ahead and start off with this one.
Yeah, so in general, when it comes to choosing a graduate program, like I think it's important to first look at, what the program is offering. So like there's a lot of aerospace programs, um, and there's even different branches of aerospace. But I knew like when I wanted to do my master's that I specifically wanted it to be focused on space. So when I did my research at the beginning is I made sure that the master programs that I was looking at were all space specific, or in some degree kind of like tailored to that. Um, so that gave me like a big pool. So from that, I then kind of narrowed it down where I was like, oh, I make sure these are all these all are space related, but do they offer online programs? Um, costs. How much does it cost at the end of the day? Um, and from then, I ended up choosing the only schools that I really wanted to consider going to were USC, and then CU Boulder. And then when I applied, I was accepted to both. So that was good, but at the same time bad because then I had to choose. So when it came to choosing, really what I did is I made sure that I attended every single orientation that they offered. So that kind of gave me a more personal connection with like the department, what type of professors were there, what were they highlighting, like programs and like research. Um, Also, like if I knew anyone from coming from Cal Poly, the aerospace department there, I knew that a lot of the people who graduate from here actually go to USC to do their masters. Like it's just a natural progression, a bunch of people there. So I knew that if I went to USC, like I would benefit because I would know a lot of people, right? I would be able to talk to other people and kind of get a sense of what was offered there. When I looked at CU Boulder, like the research was cool, right? And they were doing so many cool stuff, but I knew no one. Um, so at the end of the day, I kind of had to put those two in balance and see like what was more important to me. And for me, it was the fact like the content that was being offered and the opportunities that I could potentially get out of that. Um, so I decided to go to CU Boulder. Also, another thing that I like considered was again, as a working professional, I have a privilege where my employer actually funds my master's program. So, I knew that cost wise, I had to look at it in certain perspective, like, okay, how much are they offering? How much am I going to be spending? And then from then kind of do the math, like, um, based on this number, like, how much am I willing to spend, right? Is this within my budget? Is this not? Um, and at the end of the day, I ended up choosing like CU Boulder won in a lot of choices, right? It had the content that I wanted. Cost wise, it actually was cheaper because if you didn't know, some schools actually have partnerships with like California where you actually pay in-state tuition, even though you're going out of state. So from Colorado, as a graduate student, because of some Western something agreement, I actually pay in-state tuition. So that was also a bonus, right? Whereas in some cases that might not be. But yeah, so all of these were like things that I was taking into consideration. I talked to several people who were actually in the program or people that I knew at the schools because I was fortunate enough to know people at CU Boulder. So all of that kind of amounted to me choosing CU Boulder, and I definitely don't regret it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. All right, Jasmine, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So as far as different factors, I was actually Christian. I don't even know if Christian's on this call right now, but Christian counseled me to apply to as many programs as I can. So I applied to 13 programs, doctoral programs. And the reason why I chose doctoral programs in specific was that I was told that majority of doctoral programs were fully funded. So I didn't have to pay anything. But if I go into a master's programs, I would have to pay out of pocket. And so that's why I applied to specifically doctoral programs that are fully funded. I The reason why I was advised to apply to 13 was because um, the less that you apply to a lot the less schools you apply to, probably the less chances you have into getting in. So I applied to 13, and out of the 13, I only got accepted to three. And so, or like, yeah, I only got accepted to three. Um, and I was very grateful because that I was able to apply to so many programs. Because I know applications for these programs can cost about 100 to 120. And because I was a McNair student on campus, that waived the application fees. So that's why I was able to apply to so many. As far as like choosing, I chose these specific schools because I was looking for schools that have an area of focus that aligns with my research. So my research focuses a lot on indigenous and like indigenous studies, Native American studies, race and ethnicity. And so I was looking for schools who had an emphasis on that. So I know that there would be professors in the department and grad students in the department that can help me with my work. Um, or have at least the same methodology that I use. And so as far as when I was looking into the three schools that I did get accepted to, I was looking for the one that offered the most funding. And so because I'm going to be there for 5 years, and it's really hard, especially living out of state. And so I remember I was offered um so at the University of Pittsburgh, they offered me the most funding. I think it was about 25,000 for the year, I believe. University of Oregon only offered me 20, and then the Universe or Utah State only offered me 13 only for 3 years. And so and so I the reason why I ended up coming to Oregon was because also the University of Pittsburgh, even though they offered me the most funding, and they flew me out there to see the campus and feel it out, I didn't really feel like the professors were accessible. They were really hard, to get a hold of, and so that's not something that I was really looking for. I feel like I really didn't click with the department. So I was like, I don't really envision myself here for the next 5 to 6 years. And then I came to Oregon, and it clicked. I immediately fell in love with the nature. I saw myself, I really envisioned myself living here for the next 5 years. I really clicked with the grad students. The professors are amazing here. They just want me to do the best that I can, and so that's why I picked Oregon. And also Utah, they didn't really offer that much funding, you know. And so I was kind of like, oh, like I'll just no. And so that was kind of another thing, making sure that I felt comfortable on the campus. And that's why I'm really so when I did get accepted, they offered to, hey, like we can fly you out here for free to check us out. Please come here, please. And yeah, so those are some of the things that I'm looking for as far as like um when I was picking a like my program, as well as the demographics, it's a very diverse program. I believe, well, the cohort that I'm in right now, they're all women of color, or most of them are women of color. And so I felt it was really empowering to see, that as well. So those are some of the things that I considered when picking my program.
Amazing. Thank you both for answering. I think you guys brought a lot of different components into these application processes and in selecting the program that you eventually chose. I think it's really important that Karen brought up that the online versus being here, who you know, who you don't know, but also how you can navigate that, as well as you both mentioned that it was really important that you chose a school that aligned with what you were looking for in terms of research, which is also really important, the financial aspects, the PhD versus master's, the funding aspects of it, and the in-state versus out-of-state tuition that you have to consider. So thank you guys both for bringing light to those different components of choosing because academically, community-wise, demographically, and financially, those are all really important when deciding in grad programs. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. And this is going to be for Jackie and for Jane. So, did you attend grad school directly after completing your undergrad degree? And why or why not? And what do you recommend students do to make themselves more marketable for graduate admission? So, I'm going to go ahead and have Jane start this one off.
Of course. So, I did not attend graduate school directly after completing my undergraduate degree. The main reason was because I took 5 years to complete my bachelor's, and I knew I needed time for myself. I had just come from, what was it, almost 13 plus years of schooling, like back to back to back to back. So I knew I needed a break. And Laura knows that I was very much just involved in so many things. And I needed time for myself. I needed to slow down. I need to also figure out what my next step was. So I needed kind of a clear head. So I took a gap year. And within that gap year, I worked with RAMP. I took on the lead tutor role. I conducted research with my advisor. So I got a little head start with what became my project. And so that's what I did. And I knew that it was easy to just take a gap year. I was very motivated to still go back to school. I loved school, but I just needed some time. So that's my reasoning. To make yourself more marketable for graduate admission, I really would recommend a few things. First of all, developing relationships with professors and faculty. It not only allows you to learn more about your desired field, but it results in great connections and possibly great letters of rec. So you kind of secure that in that as well. If they know you well, they can speak to your abilities. So you make those connections. They speak to your abilities. They know you. They know you very well. Another thing is showcasing abilities beyond academics. Graduate schools, they love to see that you're a well-rounded student. And when I say well-rounded, I mean demonstrating a variety of qualities and skills that extend beyond academic performance. Academic performance is really crucial, but if you can show that you can thrive in a challenging and a collaborative environment, then that speaks volumes as well. And you can develop skills like writing, like public speaking, leadership skills, project management, and you can add that, and that just enhances your admission applications as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. I'm going to go ahead and have Jackie go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so I mean, I totally agree with Jane. If you're able to take a year off or take a break, burnout is certainly real. I wish I probably should have done the same. Because I didn't, as I mentioned, I went straight into from my undergrad into my master's program. And, if I'm being honest, the primary reason why I did that was one, out of necessity, right at the time there was no jobs, but also the funding wise. Okay, so to kind of help demystify a little bit more about funding around master's programs specifically, if you currently receive a CSU university grant, so I think they call it the SUG or SUG grant, that also is available at the master's level at the CSU. Okay, so for me, I knew that if I went straight to my master's program at a CSU campus, I was going to get that paid. Right. So for me, it was a huge cost savings. And so I had applied to two different CSU programs. I only got accepted into one, which is the one I ended up attending. But that helped me cover the entire cost of my tuition, right? And one of the choices I had to make is how do I cut costs with my housing, right? Housing is such a huge cost. And so for me, that meant moving back home, right? And that's not exciting, especially when you've experienced independence and freedom for 4 years, So it was a huge adjustment for me to move back in with my family and kind of, take on that child role again and kind of be there for the next couple of years, But I think for me, the benefits of the cost savings was a huge, incentive. And I'm totally blanking out on the second portion of the question here.
Yeah, so it's what do you recommend students to do to make themselves more marketable for graduate admission?
Sure, yes, thank you. So I will say, at the master's level, graduate level, your writing skills are essential, okay, in almost any field, right? I know that I'm in here with some pretty smart students who are doing science-based programs, and mine was education, right? And so the rigor may be a little bit different, or just the skills that you're being tapped into. But writing is going to be present in almost any field, right? And so I think if that's something that you don't feel confident in, I will say like brush up, right? Your personal statements, I cannot tell you how many times I've helped other students, review their personal statements. That's you're telling as much a story about yourself through the story that you're writing about as much as you are through your ability to write, right? And so I think that's key, right? Make sure you're taking the time to, put together a well-written personal statement, right? And it's not always about having a huge tragedy that happened to you and how you overcame all these obstacles, right, to get to where you're at today, although that may be true. It's really about how well you can convey it and tell a story. Right. And I think that's really key to this whole process. So I will say, sharpen up those writing skills because you're going to be doing a lot more writing in the next couple of years and either a master's or a PhD level.
Yes, thank you, Jane and Jackie, for answering. I think it's really interesting that you guys bring both perspective of taking a gap year and also going straight into it. Jane, you bring a really good point that you were still able to continue or to kickstart your research that gave you a head start. So I think that's something that some people may not know is available to them if they take a gap year. So thank you for sharing that. And Jackie, thank you for sharing that you went directly into it and why that was. I think something that's really important is the writing aspect as well as showcasing your skills. So thank you both for attesting to what students can do to help make themselves more marketable and receiving that help for learning how to write personal statements and gain clarity on the skills that you have going into those. So the next question is going to be for Karen and Areli. So think back to your first term in the graduate program. What stood out to you? And if you faced an obstacle, how did you go about resolving it? So Areli can go ahead and start this question off.
Yeah, so thinking back to my first term of the graduate program, I feel like I'm still kind of like going through the notions of everything and adjusting what graduate program is. I'm attending here at UC Davis, so I'm originally from SoCal, so just the adjustment itself was a complete 180. I was no longer living with my parents. I was no longer doing things or having help from my parents. And it was just like a very huge adjustment, both mentally and like physically, because I had a lot, which I took for granted, a lot of the mental support of my parents back home when I was attending at Cal Poly. They would always be applauding me. And even though I would be living on campus. I would still come home on the weekends, and just having that family bonding time definitely was a very good mental break for me. And that was not something that I didn't think was gonna be a huge 180 flip on me when I moved here in Davis. So here in Davis, I live with like another roommate, but of course, since I'm like miles away from my family, I don't get to see them every weekend like how I used to. And I depended a lot on like EBT still, and just learning what the new culture is here too, because SoCal and NorCal are two completely different things. NorCal, the weather is like very much different. And in SoCal, I was very much used to a lot of like people and gathering and just being able to like go and visit my cousins or just being able to go bowling or being able to go out and have like a taco at like 2 a.m. But here like the life or the yeah like your life here is definitely different where everything's like much quieter, everything's like more country based, some people call it. And I definitely got like that college town where you're surrounded by students 24/7, which is not something that I was used to. I was used to just being around family, but I would go to the store and there would be a student there assisting another student, and then the other student would be buying from the same store. And so that was just also another huge adjustment. But looking at it in an academic level, what I what stood out to me was that I in undergrad, I was a I excelled very well in my academics in terms of like studying. I knew what my study habits were. I reflected a lot. I'm a very reflective person, so I know what study habits work well for me. I know what doesn't work well with me and what I can do to improve because I'm the type of person who always likes to improve. And so going into grad school, I thought that I would be able to apply all those schools or all those skills going into like this new program. But that was completely not the case. I very much quickly learned that all of my study habits completely out of the window. In undergrad, you'd give me flashcards and I could memorize a stack of flashcards and I'd be able to pass the test the next day. Graduate school was a whole different learning and curveball for me. It was a lot more application based, and it was more than just understanding what is the name of this bone, but why is this bone important? What does this bone do? Which was not something that I had much practice in undergrad, and that's what graduate school does. Is it really pushes you and really does like a lot of it really tests a lot of like your critical and your analytical thinking and I did not have a lot of that practice. And so I did fall a bit behind. I felt like during my basics blocks of graduate school, I was not passing a couple of my exams, and I did feel like I, in a way, was like, what's going on? Like, I thought I was excelling really well in undergrad. All of these study tips happened. All of these study skills that I was doing, like, worked really well for me. But unfortunately, it just was the whole change of the curriculum. And so what I did to resolve it is that I reached out to people and so my advice and this is something that I've done since undergrad too, is never be afraid to ask questions, never be afraid to ask for help. I think asking for help is someone's best strength they could ever like have and apply going into anything. And so I reached out for help, and I actually got mentorships from older like years. And so there's a girl who's a second year, and she's helped me, giving me some tips. And then, and also too, there's like a program that helps on campus with directing your learning and how to reflect a lot with like your learning and your skills and what I was doing and what I was not doing throughout my studies. And so that helped a lot, was just really asking for help and seeking help outside and just really getting outside of my like comfort zone and looking at other ways to study. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. All right, Karen, if you want to go ahead and answer.
Yeah, so my first term, it was a little different. Because I was online, like I didn't get any of the like first week like feelings, it's the first week, campus is alive, it's like a great time. For me, it wasn't like that. Like I just knew I had a class. And I also remember because I had to learn everything like from scratch, right? Like where to watch my classes. I had to like learn the frequency in which professors were posting. Because of course, the first week they always have technical issues. The professors forget, how to record anything, where to upload anything. So yeah, so I was like having to like understand like what is the posting schedule. Um, I couldn't really talk to anyone either because I didn't know anyone. So I was like kind of a wait and see what happens. So it was a little bit unamusing. Um, but it was very interesting because I was excited, right? It was like classes that I really wanted to take. So I was like, I couldn't wait for them to start. But also some insight, like I also took a gap year between when I graduated to when I started school. So I really had to like learn again, like what it was to be a student. I had so much freedom. So I didn't really like study or anything like that. So when I first did started grad school, I was very ambitious. I, was working full time. I think I had just gotten like my first big project at work too. So it was requiring a lot of time for me. And I wanted to go hard mode and that I was going to do full time grad school, which meant 2 classes. Um, so when I started doing these classes, I kind of got like slapped with the realization that like, you know, my priorities had kind of changed and like the way I used to manage things in undergrad, like kind of didn't necessarily work in grad school. Like, yes, I was working full time. I worked 10-hour days too. So, very long days. And then I had to go home, watch my lecture or eat, watch my lecture, do homework, do any basic stuff that I need to do. So when I decided to take these 2 classes, one of the things that I completely forgot, 2 classes was a lot. And one of the classes that I was taking was actually like very complicated or a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. So I really did like I struggled a lot at the beginning because I I knew that I really wanted to like be successful in grad school and that I really wanted to take this class and like I really want to be, good at it, but I was struggling clearly because I didn't have enough time for it and I couldn't make time for it because, I had to work and then on the weekends, like I had to do homework or I had to like relax, that's important too. Um, so, I was really struggling and I was like a little bit frustrated with myself, like, why am I not succeeding? Like undergrad, I was able to manage 1,000 things and I was fine. So yeah, so like I really had to like take a step back and like reflect, like, I'm obviously not happy. I'm not enjoying right now this first couple of weeks. Um, so I talked about it with my boyfriend and with another like couple other people. And what I ultimately ended up deciding was, it was okay. I was just starting grad school. I'm just starting to get to know like how everything is. I obviously did not make a good decision the first semester. So I dropped the class. And honestly, after I dropped that class, I was like so much happier because one, I ended up keeping the class that I liked the most. So that was fun. And then also like I was able to like still be successful at work and do things that I really wanted to do. So yeah, don't be afraid to like, make a decision and later on be like, oh, maybe this isn't the best and I need to reanalyze. And you know what? If it means dropping a class, if it means, taking a little bit more time, whatever, to do this homework or whatever, don't be afraid to make those decisions because at the end of the day, like, you want to make sure that you're enjoying what you're doing, and that you're giving your 100%. You don't want to feel like you're frustrated, or anything like that.
Amazing. Thank you both, Adelie and Karen, for sharing. I think something I noticed with both of your answers is that it's an adjustment in many different components. For instance, the online getting used to that structure and Adelie moving away to a different community. And just the dynamic of graduate school in itself, it differs a lot from what I'm noticing in your answers from undergrad, the work, the dynamics, and everything like that. So really using your resources, using the people around you, and whatever that you can find to really help you adjust to that. So I think adjustment is a huge theme of what it's like to overcome those challenges. So thank you both for sharing. The next question is going to be for Jackie and for Jane. So please describe your experience with imposter syndrome and how you managed and overcame it. So Jackie, you can go ahead and take this one first.
Sure. I will say, being first generation and sometimes being student of color in spaces where we're not always well represented can definitely trigger feelings of like not belonging, like we're supposed to be here, did they make a mistake, am I really qualified, right? And these have surfaced, and you all are undergrad students now and these may be happening now, right? But I can tell you honestly, for me, those feelings kind of resurface at almost every level. So when I was in my master's program and when things got tough, right, when we're having difficulty making those adjustments, right, to the level of rigor, right, to the demands of the curriculum, like those feelings kind of creep up again. And so even now in my doctoral program, I can tell you my first entire year, I was just like, I don't know, did I make a mistake in like coming to my doctorate program? And like, was this the right time, right? A lot of us are working full time and juggling school full time, and so it's a lot. And I think it helps to build a network of support, right? And I think this can be everything from peers who are in your program, family, right? But also mentors, okay? And I hope that you all have been able to establish connections either in your undergrad programs, maybe in your areas of industry, perhaps. But those are lifelines, right? And when you're having those feelings kind of creep up, to have them kind of just remind you that you're there because you are qualified, right? And so it's just a matter of pushing through those tough times, right? And I think being fueled and about your end goal and what you're trying to accomplish, right? But I say that because it comes as a surprise often, right? People that it's like this many levels in and like, why do I still feel this way, right? And I think it's totally normal to feel this way. But again, reminding yourself of your why. And keeping a close network of support to remind you of, that you are qualified and you are supposed to be there.
Thank you, Jackie. That was a really wonderful answer. And Jane, whenever you're
I had the same feelings, especially as a first generation student. I came in and as soon as I applied and I got the acceptance, I thought, what did I get myself into? And then I was like, okay, very just nervous to start it. And so during my first semester, I was required to take a research and teaching professional development course. It was new and we had to take it, but it provided us the foundation that we needed to continue within our program, just giving us our resources and everything. We were asked to introduce ourselves, who our advisor was, and what our research entailed. And as everyone kept introducing themselves, I kept feeling more out of place because I heard students doing cancer research, molecular research, environmental consulting. These are things I'm not familiar with. And so I just kept going, oh, did I get myself into the wrong thing? Because I'm more agricultural based. I was one of two in my cohort. And so I just kind of sat with it for a bit, but it didn't shake me too much. But I just thought, ooh, I had a little doubt. But as I got to know people more on a more like personal level, everyone like in within my cohort, I realized that I was putting them on a much higher level in my head. Like I was like kind of seeing them from that perspective. And I in a way needed to kind of humanize them. I don't know if that's the right term, but I just needed to remember that we all started from somewhere and that we're all there to support each other as a cohort. And so I just need to remind myself of that. I still have little bouts of, imposter syndrome, as Jackie has mentioned, that it resurfaces from here and again, especially if you're in a new position, you start a new thing. But I've learned to manage it in ways by reminding myself that I'm here in this program, in this school, I'm here for a reason.
Yes, thank you both for sharing. I think it's really important to use your peers and those around you to help navigate those feelings of maybe I made a mistake or just feeling like maybe you don't belong in your cohort or the programs that you're in. But both of you used your resources, used your peers, relied on others, and I really like what you said, Jane, about humanizing the people that maybe we are intimidated by. I think it's really important to remember that we are all starting off on the same level. And you're not alone, like we see in the chat. You're not alone, and you deserve to be in the program that you're in. And it's really important to get guidance and rely on your peers and those around you to help you to remember those components of yourself. So thank you both for sharing. So another question that we have, and this one's going to be for Areli and for Jackie as well. So what recommendations do you have for financing a graduate education? So Areli, you can go ahead and start this one off.
So my experience is just going to be a little bit unique just because when I did get accepted to UC Davis, they did give me a scholarship that's fully funding my 4 years, which is really nice. But besides my education, I still needed to look for like housing and for food and for personal stuff as well when it comes to like extra money. So what I started doing is that I started pet sitting, which I did not know was very, very much common here in Davis. So I do a lot of pet sitting, and so it brings me a lot of therapeutic and joy as well, obviously because I'm also a vet student. So the finances is also helping in that way. But I also want to emphasize a lot on like the I don't know what they're called, but like the programs that help you as like you can even do it as an undergrad and as a graduate school applying for EBT like CalFresh. So CalFresh is definitely something that I heavily, heavily depended on for food. And I know I'm not sure if this is for like all programs, but at least when I got accepted to Davis and I was trying to look for like different things on how to apply for benefits, that's what it's called. Benefited programs. Davis, they told me that as long as you tell that the CalFresh people that you're a part of like the program and they understand that your school, you're automatically like accepted. And I know I was also automatically accepted when I was studying at Cal Poly Pomona. There's also other program benefits because here in Davis as well, our electricity is through like PG&E, but if you're a student, you can also get a discount. So there's also like different ways where you can look out and look for other resources in terms of like student discount, what are like the benefits that you have as a student as well. And then just doing like some side jobs, like how I said I've been doing pet sitting, and then scholarships is obviously like the biggest one that's helping me currently. But besides the scholarship that I got, the Barbara Collins scholarship, I'm still applying for a lot more scholarships because like again, I still need to think about like my housing. I still need to think about just like emergencies and stuff like that because I need a car. I need to pay for my gas. So that's another thing. And so just really budgeting, that was something that my school definitely guided us or made it a priority as soon as we like step foot into like the class, because a lot of people were very much struggling with the fact of like loans and being into debt. And so budgeting and making a plan of how much you're going to spend per month, how much you're going to make per month, how much you're going to save per month, and what are some things that you're going to cut back on. And so something that I did quite often was that I would spend a lot on boba and on coffee when I was back in Cal Poly, but that was because I was working regularly. And now I rarely eat out. I rarely have any drinks. I mean, of course, I reward myself once in a while, but just also understanding some sacrifices you need to make. So that way you can meet ends meet. And then understanding that graduate school is going to be really rewarding at the end because we're all going into this because we have a passion for it. But of course, we're going to get paid a lot more than if we were to come out of like an undergrad or anything like that. So when you go into graduate program, you're also going to have a higher base salary, and just understanding that like it will always repay back. So no matter like the loans that you get, you may feel overwhelmed. Just know that it's going to be worth it in the end, and that you will be repaying back in terms with the passion of the career that you're going into. And so it is really rewarding at the end. Because I know that's something that I always say to myself is that even if I didn't get the scholarship and I was still stressed with the loans, I know that I'm working hard to get a certain amount of like salary. That way, when I am working back for my loans, I'm doing something that I love, but I'm also not like drowning in loans because I'm working hard to, earn better and have a better future.
Thank you, Areli, for answering that question. I also want to, we do understand that we are getting nearing the end of the 4:30. So if anybody has to leave, please feel free to put any questions in the chat, so that way we can get back to you with those answers. All right, Jackie, you can go ahead and.
Of course, and I'll just make it brief because I know Areli touched on so many important ways to help you pay for graduate school. I will say I wish I would have known about EBT. I thought that was something as a student that I was not eligible for, and I really think that would have been a huge help. As many of us are being our first gen, our families are working class, and for me, I carried a lot of guilt about asking my family for money to pay for food. And guess what I did? I relied on my credit cards. And by the time I graduated, I had so much credit card debt from like just surviving college, and I wish again that someone would have shared a little bit more about these resources. Scholarships, very few students apply for scholarships. So more than often, a lot of scholarships go unclaimed. Okay, so that's something that I really encourage you. I know people say all the time, like I always say, work smarter, not harder. We have ChatGPT, right? You can write one draft of one essay and repurpose it 100 ways, right? Depending on what the prompt is. So like, be strategic in the ways that you maximize your opportunities. In terms of funding, I did share for me one strategy was going straight from undergrad to master's, and that I was able to get the grant that way. In terms of loans, there's so many ways to pay for loans, right? I went into the education field, and so there is something called loan forgiveness, right? And so that is a program that is an option. And so, you work and, after X amount of years of you making regular payments, they forgive the remaining balance of your loan. So a really great option for you. Another option is, for example, I work at the CSU, right? And so they will often pay for your programs, right? And so master's programs, for example, are fully 100% paid. My doctoral program right now currently is only paid a portion of that. And so, there are options. I always say, your employers and finding ways for them to cover the cost are also a great way to reduce the amount of debt that you get in.
Yeah, thank you both for answering. I think you both bring up really good points about scholarships. Make sure that you apply for scholarships and making sure that you're finding those resources to potentially fund the programs that you're going into. I think it's really important that you both touch on the sacrifices and just the budgeting shifts that you have to make and adjusting the way that you spend money to be able to afford making those end meets while in graduate programs. So thank you both. Our last question for the day is for all of you. So we'll go one by one. This is what skills did you develop as an undergraduate student that have helped you succeed in graduate school? And how does the coursework differ from undergraduate school to graduate school? So if you want to go one by one and each give a little piece of advice in answer to those questions, we'll go ahead and start with Areli.
So the skills that I developed as an undergrad student that helped me succeed was learning how to adapt really well, and just really putting myself in uncomfortable, like not situations, but just letting myself go outside of my comfort zone and being able to adapt in a new environment, because grad school is a new environment and it is a new setting compared to undergrad. And so in undergrad, I was doing a lot of different like extracurriculars, things that I wasn't used to when I was like in high school and prior to undergrad as well. And so just really getting outside of my comfort zone and practicing what it's like to be able to adapt into a new environment. And so that was something that helped me a lot in grad school. As far as the coursework differing from undergrad, I did talk about this a little bit in terms where it really does test a lot of like your critical and your analytical skills, at least for my program. And so this was something that I wish that I would have kind of studied or practiced or kind of enhanced more of my skills in. But overall, you get accepted to a program because it's not a mistake. That was something that they emphasized as well, is that you are not a mistake, or it was not an admission mistake. And so you are gonna do absolutely amazing at any of the graduate school programs that you go into as well.
Thank you, Areli. Jackie, you can go ahead and answer next.
Sure. I mean, similar to what Adeli shared, I think what I took away from my experiences was really solidifying my identity as a scholar and as a content expert in my field. I think that's something that you come from, that kind of feeling more empowered to kind of own that identity, and being able to have scholarly discussions, right? And not just through your writing, for example, being able to synthesize various research and be able to provide your own input and take on what is out there, but also in real life, right? And having dialogues with some of your colleagues, right? And being able to see like, hey, like, let me build on what you just shared, right? I agree with you, but here's like maybe another perspective, right? And that's like, I think, related to the critical thinking that, you develop through these programs.
Thank you, Jackie. Jasmine, if you want to go ahead and answer next.
I would say for undergrad is definitely like I took a lot of peer mentoring. I participated in the peer mentoring program here for the sociology department. That really helped me connect or network, not only with other students but also with the professors as well. And they were able to give me really strong letters of recommendation for grad school. Um, and also being able to connect with students with the peer mentoring program has helped me uh, teach, because I'm also teaching on top of studying here. I'm teaching so it helps me teach, be a better like teacher for the students that I am teaching, and as well as like the coursework. Um, it definitely I would say reading. Definitely learning how to read correctly, like academic journals has definitely been a really helpful tool in grad school. So not reading the whole thing, but just only reading things that will be helpful when it comes to discussions or classwork.
Yes, thank you, Jasmine. Jane, if you want to go ahead and answer next.
Yes, so there are two skills that I developed during my undergraduate studies, and they've been critical to my grad studies, mostly because I TA as well, and because I have a lot of commitments. But they're interpersonal skills and organizational skills. I started developing interpersonal skills from the start of my undergrad career when I joined the tutor peer mentoring team at Ramp, and so I learned how to communicate on a professional level while taking on like leadership roles, how to work in a team and communicate effectively, how to resolve any conflicts that can arise. And then organizational skills, I developed really strong organizational skills, mainly from balancing a lot of academic and extracurricular commitments. I have a lot of commitments, so I learned to stay on top of color coding, writing down each event, meeting, class, assignment, like even small tasks in my Google Calendar app and my agenda, so I can keep track of everything and I can meet deadlines accordingly. And for graduate coursework, in my experience, it differs because there's not much homework. It focuses more on readings, on discussions. I've had more classes about professional development than about actual content. But it really does depend if you take seminars about certain topics and everything. And if you're in a research-based program, you're also constantly conducting research and analyzing data for your project. So that's the difference I've kind of seen.
Thank you, Jane. And Karen?
Yeah, so kind of following what Jane said, the biggest skill that I gained was definitely my organization skills. Like in undergrad, I lived by my Google Calendar. I still live by my Google Calendar. Yeah, definitely learn how to stay organized, what works for you. And also another thing that I developed, or not necessarily a skill, but learn what type of person you are. Like in terms of like they typically say night owl, morning person. That really helps. I've learned how to leverage that and like know what I can do at certain times. The coursework itself, uh, it does in technicality, I don't think it changes a lot, but it is a lot of reading. So yeah, learn how to read efficiently, learn how to prioritize what to read because like in my case, there's been like 2 classes that want me to read like everything, but like I don't have the time to read everything. So yeah, learn how to like effectively read, and then yeah, just be aware that there is a lot of reading.
Yes, thank you all for sharing. I think those are some really good takeaways to see how your undergraduate experience can translate into your graduate experience. So that was our last question for today, but now we're just going to do some closing remarks. So if we could have each panelist give a one-liner takeaway message, which is a piece of advice for anybody who's looking at graduate school, especially as first generation college students. So one line takeaway messages, and then once again, we'll start with Areli.
So my one line of message is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Thank you. And Jackie?
I will say don't give up. If you have your heart set on a specific program and you don't get in the first time, it's not the end of the world. It happens all the time. Keep trying, prepare yourself, take the time, and come back and reapply.
Yes. Thank you, Jackie. Jasmine?
We need more people. If you, especially first generation students in these programs, we need them. You can do it too.
Yes, thank you, Jasmine. Jane?
You're not alone. You always have support from your peers, your faculty, your friends, and your family.
Thank you. And Karen?
Enjoy the process. It's it's a new experience and it can be challenging, but it should also be enjoyable for you.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for sharing and allowing us to hear about your process of going into grad school, the application process, and what your experience has been so far. So if anybody has any questions, this is the time. Feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask any of our panelists any questions. Once again, we understand we are over time, so if you have to go, feel free to email us any questions. All right. So, like once I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to email Ramp and we will get back to you with those answers. But if not, thank you so much for our panelists for joining us today. We're very happy to have you share your experience with graduate school as a first generation college student. All right.
Thank you for everybody who stuck around overtime.
Yes, thank you.
Panelists were wonderful. Moderator was wonderful. The audience was wonderful.